Exciting women's race. The men due to get underway now. 232 of them lining up in this torrential rain. The temperature not too bad though. Some 14 nations represented, and there are the standings after 4 races in this World Cross Challenge Series. Jan Milon of France leads with 57 points, but Milon not in this field today. However, just about everybody that matters is John Brown, the reigning European champion, and indeed the find of the winter is in this field. Past winners of this race there, Gebre Selassie winning last year. Well, he's giving the indoor season, the cross-country season a miss, and I understand is racing indoors in February. And one distance he's having a shot at is 800 meters, my spies tell me. So that'll be interesting. The world and Olympic 10,000 champion, over 800 indoors. Can you believe it? Guess I'll believe it when I see it. Well, one feature of this course is that there are a lot of twists and turns, and it's fairly narrow in places, and important to get a good start. John Brown in yellow there in 3rd place. As I was saying, the find of the winter, the 25-year-old from Sheffield, currently resting or residing in Teddington up until after the World Cross Country, before he'll head back to his new home in Vancouver in Canada. Brown, of course, was at university in the States for several years and has a great affinity with the US environment, and the road racing circuit has provided very rich pickings for him over the last 3 or 4 years. Well, 46 there, who's gone off very fast indeed, is El Boussi of France. But several names stuck back there in the pack have got a lot of running to do. A largely domestic field, of course, but the top 10 or 15 men of supreme quality, and they include Paul Tergat, the reigning world champion. Tergat, though, has been beaten by John Brown already this season at Lodio, another Spanish cross-country event just before the European Championships. And there's Brown wearing 2. Keith Cullen, also in great form, wearing number 4 there. Another Briton who has performed superbly on the circuit in years gone by, was disappointed at the European Championships, had flu, thought he'd recovered from it, went into the race and in fact had to drop out at Charleroi in December, but coming back into his best form now. '18 is Greg van Hest of Holland, to the left of picture there. No sign of Tergat just yet. He's back in about 12th place, I think. Got a bit of work to do to move up to this lead group. Paolo Guerra there, number 3, goes through, beaten by over half a minute by John Brown in that European Championship race, and Brown denying him his hat-trick of European titles. Guerra, the Portuguese, will be looking for revenge of sorts here, and I understand has actually been peaking for this race. Distance, of course, just under 10 kilometers for these men. 5 laps of the circuit, a long way to go. Nobody keen to really lay down a hard pace just yet and commit themselves. Van Hest of Holland continues to lead. John Brown there, number 2, looking very, very relaxed indeed. Unbeaten so far this winter, John Brown, in 4 races on the Cross Challenge circuit. Beat Tergat at Lodio, as I said. Then he won that European title, improving from 6th last year, or the previous year. Beat Daniel Komen in Durham. That was a memorable clash there. Fabulous race up in the northeast of England, but Brown it was who came out on top again. And then just before Christmas, he went to El Goebar, yet another massive race with great tradition up in northern Spain, and beat, amongst others, Nyeriki of Kenya, one of the sub-13 brigade over 5,000 meters. So he's beaten just about anybody that matters, really, on the world distance running scene at the moment. John Brown, and has to come in this one very, very confident. I understand, though, it's really one race too many for him. He didn't really want to run this one, having had so much success in recent weeks. He was committed to it contractually from quite a few weeks back, way back in December, and obviously would stick to that agreement and run here. But is very keen, I think, to get back into his training. Doesn't like to race too much. Christian Stevenson also in this field for Great Britain, wearing number 5, Christian Stevenson there, right up towards the front. And Stevenson, like Lucy Elliott, fresh from a win at the UK Inter-Counties Cross-Country Championships, a very important domestic meeting in Great Britain. Well, John Brown, very, very light indeed. Almost tiptoes across the ground. Gets a whammy-like, although he doesn't have that knee lift. Very economical use of the arms. Never really looks like he's pushing that hard, but the ground just flows past him so fast and gaps open up on the opposition. Well, that group of some 25 moving right away now. How will Brown cope with this muddy section? Guerra, the man whose title he took in Charleroi, in second place, looking very strong at the moment. And Turgat too, I noticed, has moved through to the top 6 or 8. Turgat in third, Cullen back in fourth, having perhaps his best run of the winter. But John Brown said that he really hasn't been training that hard in recent weeks, or indeed in recent months, since the Olympic Games, or between the Olympic Games and Charleroi in December, which was a period of some 4 months. He said he did just 4 hard training sessions, and yet the good running, the good racing is just pouring out of him. I'd imagine his coach George Gandy up in Loughborough is just wondering what he has to do to hold this man back. And it does augur well for the future. Brown is quoted as saying one of his great targets for the summer is Eamon Martin's British record at 10,000 metres. It currently stands at 27:23, and something I would say that on recent form is well within Brown's capability. However, Ruck John himself will want his legs to do the talking where that's concerned. He's just saying he's chasing it. He's not saying he is capable of it. I'm saying that. Well, the rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain. This is a particularly hilly part of the plain, although Seville itself does sit on a wide river valley. This is just up on the hills, some 5 or 10 miles outside the city. The Spaniards, of course, very, very strong in distance running at the moment. Enormous depth of talent. And several big names up in the top 10 there. I'll identify them for you as we get a better look at them. But Brown leading from Guerra. Keith Cullen, another Briton, up in third place at the moment. Turgat is in fourth place now. The man who has looked so impressive in the world cross country over the last couple of years, lifting titles in '95 in Durham and again in 1996 in South Africa. Guerra of Ethiopia in the green, back in 5th place. Just running nice and steadily at the moment. No major gaps developing there. An interesting face, though, up in the top 8 in the yellow is Isaac Viciosa of Spain. Now, he's a 1,500-metre man. He ran 3:33 dead last summer. And what great strength and cross-country form he's showing here. Just to the left of picture in the yellow, behind number 12, that's Million Wolde, another Ethiopian. Christian Stevenson up beside Viciosa, having a great run and good experience this for the Welshman. Needs to mix it with athletes of this sort of calibre. They'll drag him through and pull him up into world class. Paul Taylor goes through as well for Britain there. Man who was so disappointed being left out of the British team at the European Cross Country Championships. Well, I can't remember the last time I saw conditions quite as bad as this. If anything, since that women's race, the rain has got harder. Let me just confirm for you, by the way, that in that women's race, it was indeed Fidatov who won from Whammy, Vaquero, Sandel and Ribeiro. Lucy Elliott of Britain finished 7th, and Liz Talbot, a great return to form for her, was down in 10th place. And the overall standings are led by Fidatov from Whammy, with Nagura, Vaquero and Subano of Kenya coming up in 3rd, 4th and 5th. Well, this looks to be a different Paolo Guerra to the one we saw at the European Championships. at a European race some 4 weeks ago. There's Viciosa, the middle distance man I was talking about. Guerra has gone away, trained hard, and got it right by the looks of things, because he's looking very comfortable up there at the moment. Brown has made tentative attempts at opening up a gap, but thought better of it in these early stages. Just maintaining the tempo there, knowing that it will gradually take its toll on the men behind him. 7 men in this group and it's beginning to get away. And what a breadth of talent there is. A world-class 1500 man, Viciosa. Tergat, the Olympic 10,000 meters silver medalist and reigning world cross-country champion. Paolo Guerra needs a boost to his cross-country career. Failed to finish the world cross-country last year in South Africa. There he is, wearing number 3. Was absolutely thrashed by John Brown at the European Championships in December. Oh, it has to be said, that was very, very early days in the cross-country season, and a lot of people not in particularly good shape at that point. But he also dropped out of his heat at the Olympic Games in the 10,000, did Paolo Guerra, so the summer didn't go brilliantly for him either. Didn't improve on his personal best at 5,000 of 13:18. It's amazing what a rest from racing and the pressures of competition and just several weeks of consecutive good hard training can do for your fortunes, and that looks to be what Paolo Guerra has done. Interestingly, Guerra and Cullen both coping with that mud slightly better there than John Brown perhaps. Tergat in 4th place, a man who was just out sprinted by Guerra Selassie in that Olympic final over 25 laps. What a race it was. So much criticism heaped upon the city of Atlanta and the organisation generally of the Olympic Games. The vast majority of it quite justified. But you have to say that the competition on the track, the work the athletes had to do, was quite astonishing. And race after race, one event after another, be it in the field or on the track, or indeed on the roads in the marathons, produced some memorable images. Paolo Guerra's quick CV there. 3rd in Brussels. Winner at Fuensalida. Not up against the toughest of competition in that one, though. But looking confident here, Guerra. He's a man who does like to lead. He likes to be in control, use his strength, break away in the middle of the race if he can, rather than leaving it to a sprint finish. Indeed, it's in the nature, I suppose, of great distance runners to try to break away, keep the hammer down on the floor all the way, rather than leaving it to a sprint finish. The truly great distance runners, the ones that can either hang on or make it very fast from the start and raise their game in the last 200 meters. And Guerra Selassie lifted Olympic gold by having just those qualities. His last 200 meters in Gothenburg in 1995, and he sprinted away to yet another 10,000 meters gold medal. It was 25.1 seconds. And the vast majority of world-class 800-meter men would be delighted with the last 200 of that time. I'm very impressed with Christian Stevenson here. It's easily the best cross-country run of his young life. Right up there amongst half a dozen men who will feature very highly at the World Cross Country in 8 or 9 weeks' time. Stevenson there wearing number 5 to left of picture. Still only 22 years old, but looking very comfortable as this pace is laid down by Brown and Guerra. Keith Cullen yet to impose himself on this field. Might do good just to get his nose in front and get the feel for what the tempo is, what the responsibility is, if you like, of leading the race rather than sitting in. Psychologically too, the effect on the opposition will be to his benefit. But Tergat beginning to look very easy now, wearing number 1 there. Just the latest in a long, long line of Kenyans who have dominated the World Cross Country Championships. Khalid Scar, one of the few men to interrupt that. But William Sigai and of course the great John Ngugi, perhaps the greatest of them all. And, We know he's in good form after that win at Brussels a month ago, a month before this race. Just beating Habte Jifar of Morocco in that one. He's doing a fair bit of travelling around, and he'll want to go back to Kenya very soon to get on with his preparation for a defence of his world cross-country title. Even the Kenyans have to go home and train sometimes. Plenty to come yet in this one. In this Seville World Cross Challenge race. Coming to you on Eurosport. And of course, we'll bring you that climactic meeting of the season, the World Cross Country Champs too. Just giving you an idea of some of the top men to watch for in a couple of months' time. Paolo Guerra of Portugal still leads. John Brown looking very comfortable there, wearing number 2. Keith Cullen with the long black hair. A man who has a full-time job as a graphic designer. Works up in North London, lives in Highgate indeed. Trains at Enfield. Really one of the men caught between the amateur and professional eras, if you like. Keith Cullen wants to turn professional. Can't really afford to give up his full-time job. Yet isn't sure if his racing earnings, his athletics earnings will be enough to keep him going. So many young athletes teeter on that dividing line, if you like, between the two groups of people. Those who can afford to turn professional, those who can't. Some of them take the leap with poor advice, it has to be said, never make it. Some of them, perhaps it's the one thing that holds them back from becoming truly world-class. Well, Guerra running very aggressively through that muddy section again. John Brown suffering a little bit, I think, each time through that mud. Turgat moved through to second place. Cullen coping with it as best he can. Viciosa still up with that lead group. So is number 12, Million Wolde of Ethiopia. And also into the frame now is Emerson Isaben of Brazil, number 14. He's towards the back of that group now. I can think of nothing worse than being behind somebody in these sort of conditions where you're continually being splattered by mud and grit and water down the entire front of your body because you're behind them, they're splashing up behind themselves, and yet getting a clear run at those sections. And I think this is what Guerra appreciates. He's a very, very experienced cross-country racer now. He knows if you're going to travel at optimum pace, you might as well be in the front. No point in hanging back. That surface in places is actually quite hard. I remember running on this course a couple of times myself back in the 1980s, and there are parts of the course where you're running on a very, very stony, gravelly surface, and even this rain won't have affected it too much. So really contrasting conditions on this course. You could argue it's a classic cross-country course, although some people might say, no, you shouldn't have to run through a lake in any cross-country race. Well, lapped runners are not really what you need on a course like this. The gentleman's been good enough to move over a little bit and let the leading group through. That's pretty important. Quite narrow in places, this one. Guerra constantly checking over his shoulder there. Perhaps just looking at the features of Brown, trying to see what sort of state the European champion is in. You get absolutely no information back, do you? Brown, deep in concentration. Very, very seldom does that expression change, irrespective of the effort, or so it seems. Did say that at the European Championship race at Charleroi, John Brown, he skipped away from the opposition almost without trying. He felt very, very easy indeed. He Here's one of these athletes who has that enviable quality of looking very, very relaxed throughout the race. Quite annoying, I guess, when you're running beside them and you're working hard. Well, single file now, and certainly the tempo has picked up a little bit as this battle between these two, dare I say, the two of them with the world champion right behind in third, but John Brown wearing number 2, Paolo Guerra of Portugal wearing 3, is beginning to hot up. You can just sense a tightening of the screw. Tergat in third. Back in fourth place is 13, that's Guerra Tola in the green for Ethiopia. Keith Cullen beginning to drop back a little bit now. He's run superbly so far. If he can only go with this slight pickup in tempo, then he would be dragged clear of 3 or 4 of the others. But the gap's developing now, and very, very quickly indeed. Look at that. Tergat back to Guerra Tola, and it's a 6 or 8 meter gap back to 4th place. Cullen in turn in 5th is about 4 or 5 meters back. Viciosa running supremely for a middle distance runner in 6th. Well, John Brown will be very, very relieved to get this race over and done with. It's the last in a series of races he's done. As I say, he's unbeaten in the 4 prior to this race. That record looks to be under threat from Guerra, the way the Portuguese is running so aggressively, but John Brown plans to go away to altitude later on in the spring, perhaps with Rob Denmark to Colorado. His eyes will be very, very clearly focused on, first of all, the World Cross Country, and then the summer as the next 4 to 6 weeks roll by. Plans to do the 10,000 in Athens next summer at the World Championships, but doesn't want to do the British trials for the team. His wife, Martina, German girl, is expecting her first child in late June, and John Brown has said quite clearly, many, many months ahead of the event, that is what takes priority for him. Well, these two, by far and away, the best non-African cross-country runners in the world over the last 2 or 3 years. Paolo Guerra has placed very highly in the world cross-country, behind the Africans. He was 13th in 1994, 6th in 1995, when he was the first non-African finisher. But Brown took that title, if you like, unofficial European title at Stellenbosch in March, and he finished in 12th place. Guerra, perhaps resenting that threat to his status as Europe's top cross-country runner. These coming through, as the caption says, Guerra Tola, Keith Cullen, wearing number 4 there, although you can hardly see his number, and Viciosa. Cullen beginning to show the strain there, but it has been a great run for him, and I know he feels that he's improving with each race, and he too is very, very clearly focused on the World Cross Country. He won't over-race, he'll get it right. The rolling hills of southern Spain in the background, I'm sure have seldom looked greener than that. And I bet this valley has never looked muddier than this. In the sunshine on a warm day, it really is a glorious place. It's set around some ancient Roman ruins. There's an amphitheatre just to one side of the course, which is in pretty good condition. It's fascinating to walk around. But I wouldn't be surprised if the whole place is underwater today. Tola goes through, Viciosa and Cullen right behind him. And Viciosa and Cullen both looking fatigued now. And Tola a little isolated there in the green. Again, that's a new name for me on the international circuit, but they do just crop up time after time after time from the dark continent. Ethiopians, Kenyans, South Africans now, of course. And we haven't even talked about the North Africans, the Algerians and Moroccans. Morsely, Scar, Awita. They're almost a different class of athlete nowadays. So racing results over the last 10 years have led us to believe John Brown, certainly one man who feels that they are eminently beatable. Still a little bounce in the stride of Tola there. Viciosa, very heavily muscled, as you would expect from a 1500 man. Keith Cullen, well, formerly a steeplechaser. Talking to him recently, he said, that's it, I'm done with steeplechase. He did fall over in his Olympic semi-final and break his arm. Maybe that was the turning point for him. But Keith Cullen says, no, it's 5,000 meters for me for the next couple of years. And the strength he gets from this sort of race and the training needed for it will stand him in very good stead for the coming summer. The indoor season, of course, well underway now. And I can tell you that we are covering some 12 meetings throughout February on Eurosport. Loads of athletics for you to enjoy. Steve Crum will be joining me in some of those commentaries. John Brown, it's his turn to turn the screw and put on the pressure here. Look at Guerra grimacing there in second place. So determined, Guerra. This is a very different athlete to the one we saw a month ago at the European Championships. Paul Tergat, the reigning world champion on the country, back in third place. Can't go with these two at the moment. He's hanging on by a very, very thin thread, that's for sure. I just wonder when it's going to snap. He too will be looking at putting in many weeks of hard training, probably at altitude between now and the World Cross Country. He'll desperately want that hat-trick, and you can be sure that the rest of the Kenyan team will be under orders to help him achieve it when it comes to Turin on March the 23rd. Spends much of his year based in Italy, says Paul Tergat, but he'll go back to Kenya for his final month's preparation for Turin. What a contrast between the arm action of John Brown and Guerra. Brown, very, very low arm carriage, quite stiff in the shoulders. Paolo Guerra driving with the arms, using it as much as he can to get that stride length up through this mud and off the slippery surface. John Brown displaying a great contrast in talents. He is the British record holder for 15 kilometers on the road, and if that may not mean too much to some of you, it is a very, very commonly run distance in the USA, and more so now in the UK or in Europe. And his time ranks right up there amongst the very fastest times ever for 15 kilometers, which is around 9 miles. Road racing, pretty different to that, I can tell you. But John Brown has managed to master both. Yet again there, Brown losing 3 or 4 meters, maybe more, to both Guerra and Tergat. Back into second place now, and every single lap their positions change at that point as they go into the mud. Brown leads, Guerra is in second. They come out of it with the Portuguese in front and the Briton in second place, but Brown just pushed on hard there coming up out of the muddy section, is determined to maintain that lead, keep the psychological edge over the Portuguese. But look at the contrast in features there. John Brown so relaxed. Guerra almost going into the back of him there as they turn for the final time into the finishing straight. Now who's got the speed off this very, very awkward surface, splashing with every stride, desperately looking for the better foothold, and it looks to be the Portuguese. That is cruel in a way for John Brown, but in another way, very, very richly deserved by the Portuguese. What a comeback from losing by 35 seconds a month ago in Charleroi. Guerra, on a similar sort of surface, defeats the European champion John Brown. The Briton is second. Paul Tergat, the Kenyan, loses a bit of ground on the run-in, but comes in for third place. Important cross-challenge points for him. And then coming home in fourth is Garamat Tola of Ethiopia. Watch that name. It's a new one to me today, but I'm sure we'll see a lot more of it. Viciosa of Spain is fifth. That's an astonishing run by him. Keith Cullen is sixth. Very, very strong running too from the Briton, and again more good cross-challenge points. And look at that grimace, half grimace of pain, half smile of very, very deep satisfaction there from Paolo Guerra. Victory for him in Seville in 1997, and he knows his cross-country season is back on course. Well, the overall...
Isto é tudo maluco.
Em episódios inéditos.